Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, citizens and voters of Guam. Today is my annual State of the Island address. Now, normally I do a counterpoint because usually the governor would give her State of the Island address, and then I would take my clues from her and create a counterpoint argument. But as we know this year, the governor didn't feel it important enough to clue in the citizens of Guam the actions she is doing and the money she is spending on our behalf. So what I'm going to do is give my State of the Island address, but we're going to do a little twist. First of all, it's interactive. If you want, you can text 727-4321, and you can text your questions or comments into me as we do this very important work that to keep our citizens and voters informed, or you can make comments here on the Facebook page, and periodically I will review the text and I'll review the comments to see if there's anything that needs to be clarified at that point. Now, I have been accused in the past of being just a little bit negative. And so what we're going to try to do is we're going to do the State of the Island address from a positive point of view. Now, when I say a positive point of view, I'm talking about we made decisions in 2018 and 2020 that if we could to make them over again, would things be different? So go to screen. Over the past 15 years, I have probably done over 200 videos and also done, oops, here we go, back up. There we go. I have written over 200 letters to the editor in the Guam Daily Post, the Pacific Daily News, and also Pacific Island Times. And I've also published probably 300 or 400 videos on a wide range of topics. So, over the shoulder. So as we do our presentation today, I'm going to be looking at the impact if some of these decisions that we made started in 2018 and 2020 were made differently. And as you saw, I've got a tremendous body of information out there in the form of letters, probably nearly 1,000 Facebook posts and several hundred videos. So these decisions that we're going to make in our 2018 timeline, 2020 timeline, going back to the past. I mean, if the legislature can give themselves and the governor retroactive pay raises, we as voters can make a retroactive change of decision. So let's see how that would have changed out. So screen. Thank you. So had we elected a, just go back to off screen. We're going to get this right, ladies and gentlemen, I promise. We will. Off screen. Off. There. A little dance taking place here that we're going to get Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, citizens and voters of Guam. Today is my annual State of the Island address. Now, normally I do a counterpoint because usually the governor would give her State of the Island address, and then I would take my clues from her and create a counterpoint argument. But as we know, this year, the governor didn't feel it important enough to clue in the citizens of Guam the actions she is doing and the money she is spending on our behalf. So what I'm going to do is give my State of the Island address, but we're going to do a little twist. First of all, it's interactive. If you want, you can text 727-4321, and you can text your questions or comments into me as we do this very important work that to keep our citizens and voters informed. Or you can make comments here on the Facebook page, and periodically I will review the text and I'll review the comments to see if there's anything that needs to be clarified at that point. Now, I have been accused in the past of being just a little bit negative. And so what we're going to try to do is we're going to do the State of the Island address from a positive point of view. Now, when I say a positive point of view, I'm talking about we made decisions in 2018 and 2020 that if we could to make them over again, would things be different? So go to screen. Over the past 15 years, I have probably done over 200 videos and also done, oops, here we go, back up. There we go. I have written over 200 letters to the editor in the Guam Daily Post, the Pacific Daily News, and also Pacific Island Times. And I've also published probably 300 or 400 videos on a wide range of topics. So, over the shoulder. So as we do our presentation today, I'm going to be looking at the impact if some of these decisions that we made starting in 2018 and 2020 were made differently. And as you saw, I've got a tremendous body of information out there in the form of letters, probably nearly 1,000 Facebook posts and several hundred videos. So these decisions that we're going to make in our 2018 timeline, 2020 timeline, going back to the past. I mean, if the legislature can give themselves and the governor retroactive pay raises, we as voters can make a retroactive change of decision. So let's see how that would have changed out. So, screen. Thank you. So, had we elected a, just go back to off screen. We're going to get this right, ladies and gentlemen, I promise. We will. Off screen. Off. There. A little dance taking place here that we're going to get better at it. So the difference is in 2018, we elected a politician, and a politician operates from a point of personal privilege. So what we've seen over the past 3 years, 3 months is personal privilege politics at their very worst. What would have happened if we had elected someone that had was coming at it from a public service point of view? So we'll pretend, for the sake of this address, the State of the Island address, that I ran and got elected. And one of the first things that I would have done is I would have made a campaign promise about good governance, because everything that happens on our island flows out of good or bad governance. So what does good governance look like? Well, under a public service leader, we would have prioritized the government operations to make things more effective, more efficient. And one of the first things we would have done is we would have helped introduce and pass legislation that would have improved the accountability of the government and eliminated corrupt practices, similar to things that are being proposed in the voter initiative process today. So we would have reorganized the government starting with Adelup. So what we would have done here is, screen, we would have recognized that over the past, in 2016, we were already paying $14 million a year in rent for government office spaces. And that's from 2016. Since 2016, over the past 6 years, we've rented more office space, not less, and those rents have increased. So I estimate we're spending somewhere around, I'd say $16 to $20 million a year in rent. So the first thing we would have done is we would have moved Adelup. We would have closed the governor's offices and moved them up to Government House. Over the shoulder? Because there's no reason why the taxpayers of Guam should be providing a luxury mansion with an ocean view for the governor of Guam. Now, originally Government House was built because the Navy governors were coming from somewhere in the mainland and they didn't have a house here. They could have rented one, but the government provided one for them, like they do with military personnel. And in the mainland, the governments usually provide homes for their governors because, if you were the governor of Hawaii and your home was in Hilo, you couldn't commute easily from Hilo to Honolulu. Or if you were living in California and the seat of government's in Sacramento and you're a resident of San Diego. So in the States, it makes sense, but not here on Guam, because right here on Guam, the farthest the governor will be living from the capital will be 20 miles. So we would move the offices of the governor from Adelup up to Government House. Make better use of that asset for the benefit of all the people of Guam, not just one person of Guam. And we would have moved the Attorney General's office and the Police Department Records Division from the ITC building to Adelup. And in the process, we would have saved taxpayers over $2 million. And that becomes very important, and I'll tell you why. The next thing that we would be doing, full screen, is we would be building a new Department of Administration super block right here with the roads running under the building. This building would have about 400,000 square feet of office space and would be big enough to move all the departments and agencies of government of Guam into a single building, provide parking, provide a mass transit system over the shoulder, and public restrooms that would make the Plaza de España experience much better for our visitors. And in the process, just moving the Attorney General's office and the Police Records Department saves almost $2 million. That's 50% of the debt service on this building. So, all right, somewhere there's phones are ringing out in the office. Okay, that's 50% of the debt service on this building just by moving those two agencies. And once this building is completed, and we move the rest of the agencies out of the ITC building and other very expensive buildings into the Department of Administration new building, we will do three things. The first thing we will do is we will reduce the cost of operation for Government of Guam. The second thing we will do is we will make the customer service aspect of Government of Guam so much better, because with all the Government of Guam line agencies in one building, it would be easy for citizens to get whatever they need done without having to run to Tamuning, then run to Anigua, run up to Barrigada, by bringing everybody in. And this will be an asset that the taxpayers own. The third thing we will do is we will stimulate Agana, revitalize all the businesses in Agana, because now with a large body of Government of Guam employees working from their offices in Agana, it will give new life to our capital city. This building will also we'll put the police department on the second floor and the jail on the second floor, and 300 parking stalls on the second floor as well. Floors 3 through 8 will be government offices, and the rooftop of this building will be a trellised garden. They'll have benches, picnic tables, so it'll be a nice outdoor environment. Off screen. So once we've realigned all these government offices and stuff, then we will reduce government of Guam's operating budget by nearly $20 million a year. That's a significant savings and more than offsets the bond payments to pay for this building. Plus it provides about $12 to $18 million a year that can be used to fund other quality of life improvements to government of Guam. And we'll get to those in a second. The second thing that we did as a public service focused administration is we did not appoint political contact to critical positions. For example, the person we appointed to Port Authority of Guam was not someone who's never run a port. We appointed a retired Navy base commander. And our appointee for the airport was someone who had been a long-time management employee of the airport, knew the workings of the airport inside out, not some former senator. The third thing we did to improve our government was we eliminated 90% of travel. We made heavy use of the technology through video calls and also just regular telephone. There's no reason to spend tens of thousands of dollars to send people to the mainland for meetings that are going to last just hours. So we eliminated 90% of all travel and used those fundings to help reduce operational expenses of the government. The fourth thing we did in our first 90 days as a public service focused administration is we put a freeze on hiring, with the exception of critical positions like a mortician. And we looked at filling vacant positions from other departments and agencies, because during the first 120 days of the public service focused administration, we analyzed the operations of the government, identified areas where we were overstaffed and transferred employees to areas we were understaffed. And what we looked at combining functions of some agencies as well. In our opinion, there was no reason why we needed to have a personnel department for administration, a personnel department for police, a personnel department for education, a personnel department for water, personnel department because hiring is hiring. We have one department, and what we did is we transferred the excess personnel around to other vacant positions, preserving their seniority and their compensation, and we allowed attrition and retirement to help lower the headcount for government of Guam, because our goal as a public service focused administration was to reduce the tax burden of government while at the same time improving operations. In order to do that, we did something that all of our predecessors promised to do but never did. We collected all taxes owed. We reached out to all the taxpayers that owed money to government of Guam, and we made arrangements with them to pay their taxes. In the cases of businesses, we held their business licenses in suspension until the payments arrangements were made. In the case of people, we handled it on a case-by-case basis, recognizing that coming out of the pandemic, not only did businesses suffer hardships that we had to work with, but individuals suffered hardships that we had to work with. But the point was, we identified opportunities to collect taxes and we went after them. And also we changed the rules and regulations. Right now, previous administrations were trying to give a pork barrel contract to some vendor to collect the cigarette tax. We changed the rules, and sin taxes must be paid in advance before the products can be released from commercial port or the airport. The vendor, we put the burden on collecting the taxes on the vendor, not on government of Guam. Therefore, we eliminated the need to hire a third-party person to go out and collect taxes at the cost of millions of dollars a year, money that we can use to get into those quality of life improvements we were talking about. And as we started seeing an improvement in the cash flow, now bear in mind, we're back in time, we're in 2019, before the pandemic. We started the process to delink from the US IRS. There's a whole process that would allow us to create a Guam-based tax code. Previous politicians, administrations, and senators didn't go that way, but they complained about being held hostage by US IRS all the time. In our administration, we started the delinking process, which is going to take a number of years, but at the end of the day, we will have a Guam-based tax collection system that will be more appropriate to an island where the majority of the jobs are low-wage service sector jobs. And in the process, we rolled the business privilege tax down to 3%, and we installed a 2% sales tax. And it was important for us to install the sales tax because during the pandemic and previous administrations ignoring the reality of e-commerce, we were driving many of our small retail businesses out of business because they couldn't compete against the purchasing power of the big companies with the added tax burden. So this levels the playing field for small retailers and small business. We rolled back the fuel tax, the 4% increase in the fuel tax. We rolled it back to the tax level that it was back in 2016. It's important that we do collect the fuel taxes because we do need the money to fix the roads, but the way that the fuel taxes were handled, I didn't agree with, and so we took care of that. And we finally installed a state-of-the-art computer system that links all government of Guam agencies together on one platform. And with one platform, it allows us to hire the level of skill necessary to maintain that system. And it also gave us some real interesting options as far as customer service, because as part of our better government, we put customer service people in each mayor's office. And those customer service people have access to all government systems. They can handle your utility bills. They can handle anything that you need with government of Guam. So if you need to get a copy of a registration, they can do it there at the mayor's office. Those kinds of things are now possible because we have an integrated computer system and we have customer service people at each of the mayor's office, which reduces the stress and wear and tear traveling to multiple agencies to get things done. We also reformed the election process. We had campaigned on reforming the election process because we wanted the government to be open to more people. So in this administration, we engaged with the voter initiative process. We eliminated the primary election. We returned to 21 senators and a part-time legislature. And those changes will be taking effect this year in the 2022 election. And we also opened the voting window for 2 weeks prior to the election by putting a member of the GE staff at each mayor's office. So for 2 weeks prior to the general election, there will be a member of Guam Election Commission in each mayor's office, well, two people in each mayor's office for 6 days a week for the 2 weeks before the election. And we also eliminated the scrubbing list process. I see no reason why we should eliminate voters just because they haven't voted in 2 elections, just because there weren't enough interesting candidates to compel them to come out to vote. I think we do our citizens a disservice by minimizing the voter list, because a smaller voter list only benefited incumbents. That's why we have eliminated that process. And now, once you register to vote on Guam, your voter registration will be valid until you leave island or you cancel it yourself. And the next item on our good governance commitment to the people of Guam is we started a condemned lands registry. Everybody knows someone who had land condemned by government of Guam for whatever reason. My family also has had land condemned, but by creating a registry, we allow people to go and protect their claims, because at some point in time, the government, your government, is going to be required to compensate you for the land they took away from you and did not compensate you for. And also by preserving these legitimate claims, we eliminate the tax burden. In fact, we will be refunding property taxes plus interest for all those people who continued to pay the property tax on lands that were taken away from them in order to preserve their claim for the property. By creating a condemned lands register, we will preserve for eternity your land. Now, I'm not sure how or when the government will be able to pay you for it, but we will protect your legitimate claim so that you don't have to. And I know a lot of people out there who for decades have been paying property taxes on lands that were taken away from them. You won't have to do that anymore. And the final part of our campaign for good governance was we sold GPA. Following the very successful sale of Guam Telephone Authority, we sold Guam Power Authority, transferred the debt burden from the residents of Guam to the new company, transferred the employees to the new owners of GPA, and we also transferred their retirement system to the new company. This is probably one of the last government-owned utility agencies, just like Guam Telephone Authority was one of the last government-owned telephone agencies. And by selling Guam Telephone Authority, we all saw how phone service on the island dramatically improved after that sale. We look forward to seeing our power system improvements follow the same course. The rates, though, for the new company will still be controlled by the Public Utilities Commission, just as they are in all 50 states. So we didn't give away our protections. We just gave away the asset that was too expensive for the taxpayers of Guam to continue to own. Now, with the sale of Guam Power Authority and the reduction of government of Guam expenses, we were able to, in 2019, start making some quality of life improvement for our people of Guam. And the first thing we did is we started a Singapore-style public housing program. On the island of Singapore, which started out as a low-wage manufacturing center, much like Guam is a low-wage service sector center, less than 10 to 15% of the people owned their houses. Today, almost 90% of the residents of Singapore own their home. We have a housing shortage on Guam, and the cost of rents and houses are skyrocketing because we have a short supply and we have high demand. And we also have outside forces affecting the cost of housing on Guam. We have the military with their higher allowances affecting the rents on Guam and the prices on Guam. And we have competition from urban renewal, who is coming in and renting quality homes to rent out to people who can't afford to rent homes. With this program, we will be adding 1,000 high-density quality rental units that will be affordable for residents of Guam. They can either buy them outright or they can get them on a lease-to-purchase basis, very similar to the system that is being done in Singapore. And the best part about this is that part of this bond will be financed from the savings on the rent on the Government of Guam office spaces, and the rest of the debt service will be covered by the rents or the purchase price of the unit in the high-density housing project. Now, this is very important because we need home ownership at high levels to stabilize our people, because right now we are graduating 2,000 students a year from our education system, but our economy is only creating 1,000 jobs, and most of those jobs are in the low-wage service sector. And the problem with that is that so many of our children are leaving island because they can't afford to live here. We have we have multiple households where we have 2 and 3 generations living in a single building. And that's unsustainable for the long time. Let's go to full screen. So the units that we are looking at are very similar to the ones that they are building in Singapore, which are high quality. It's not project type units like we've seen in the slums in many major cities in the United States. These are actually buildings that people want to live in. And because they own the building, they have a sense of pride. Shoulder, they have a sense of pride of owner that comes with ownership of the building. And then in time, they will be able to use the equity they build up in these units to help advance their quality of life through maybe upgrades to newer homes, bigger homes, or nicer homes. But the number one asset for most American families is their home. This program that we've instituted will give more residents of Guam a chance to have their piece of the American dream. Off. The next thing we did is we started in 2019 a mass transit system, similar to the one they have in Honolulu. And the nice thing is, Guam is so much smaller than Honolulu. We will have a mass transit system that has the same level of quality as the one in Honolulu and the high rates of utilization because of the quality of the system. But it won't cost us anywhere near as much as the system does in Honolulu, simply because we don't have the size of an island that Oahu has. The nice thing about this mass transit system is that it saves ordinary people $30 a day on the cost of driving a car to work. Now, we did the research back in 2014 when I was on the Mass Transit Task Force for former Governor Calvo, and that's what the numbers came to. But today, with the rapid rises in prices of gas and the prices of cars and parts and ownership, that number is probably closer to $40 or $50 a day to own a car that you drive to work. Just imagine if we were to take that $30 to $50 a day and use it for things like food, clothing, shelter, retirement savings, it would be a whole different story. On the same line of quality of life, when the pandemic hit, that mass transit system would have been a lifeline for so many families who lost their jobs, were laid off, or businesses were closed down, and they didn't have money to go to the food distribution centers. During the pandemic, this Public Service Administration would have waived bus fares for the duration of the public health emergency so that all residents would have access to safe, affordable transportation. Very affordable, no fare. And that would have helped with the quality of life during the pandemic. And also, a mass transit system will help us reduce the density of parking lots, because when we have a viable mass transit system, and I'll use Honolulu as an example there, a condominium I lived in, they had one parking stall for every unit. Not the 2 parking stalls and 2 guest parking that we tend to see in places where they don't have an effective mass transit system. So it allows less land to be set aside for parking, more land to be set aside for construction of affordable housing. Now, when the pandemic hit, there were a lot of things that could have been done. I know I'm shifting gears a little bit here, but this is a quality of life issue. In 2019, our tourism numbers were already in trouble. The number of visitors were up, but the revenue generated by the visitors was going down. And part of the reason was dissatisfaction with our island. They thought that it was trashy and there wasn't enough to do. So we have an opportunity here with the American Rescue Plan funds to do something that is good for our people and good to help rebuild our tourism economy. And one of the things that public service focused administration would be doing, instead of buying uniforms and hats and cleaning supplies for buildings that were closed, golf carts, and the whole 9 yards, we would have concentrated on hiring companies, private companies, to get out there and clean our parks and our roadways, to beautify our island, because not only would it make it better for the tourists when they do come back, but it would make it better for the residents who are still here, still on island, and still looking for ways to get outside and have quality experiences. We would have used some of that money to build bathrooms and put in video security to monitor those bathrooms. And we would have used some of those funds to hire landscaping companies to come out and landscape the parks and also maintain those parks. We would have hired private trash hauling companies to come out to those parks daily and remove the trash. Another thing we would have done, we would have created safe playgrounds in the villages. We would have put new playground equipment in the villages, repaired the fencing in the playgrounds, and cleaned up the playgrounds in the villages so that the children would have some place within walking distance of most homes in the villages that they could go and safely play. We would have put a video surveillance system in place on these playgrounds so the parents at home could pick up their phone or watch on their computer their children playing in the parks and playgrounds. We would have put shaded areas and put benches, and we would have put a restroom facility in. And again, we would have subcontracted out to small businesses to maintain the parks within these villages. These were things that we could have done and we should have done to help improve the quality of life of a population that was homebound for nearly 2 years. A public service focused administration back in 2019 would have enhanced animal control officers. And instead of putting $1 million in the Pacific Island Development Bank, we would have invested it in the safety of our residents and villages by using that $1 million to run a spay and neuter program for registered pets. And we also would have used some of that money to fund animal control operations to round up unregistered pets. Now, it's very important that we do these things to preserve our rabies-free status for when we come out of the pandemic, but it's also important that we do these things for the safety of our children. I know parents who drive their kids a few blocks to school because they don't want them to be attacked by the dogs that are hanging around in the village chasing the kids because of the food in their lunchboxes. This situation cannot be allowed to stand. So if this public service administration had taken power in 2019, the spay and neuter clinic would have started then. Animal control efforts would have been put into force then, and we would have worked very hard to dramatically reduce the stray populations in our villages, especially Dedido. And I say that because a couple of weeks ago I had an experience walking through a street in Dedido and was confronted by a pack of dogs. And I literally had to walk backwards to get out of there because I couldn't take my eye off those dogs. Just imagine a small child facing that same situation. That's why we need to do these things. In 2019, our new administration started a work release program based around road crews at Department of Corrections. We went through with a new administrator at the Department of Corrections, and we worked with him to develop road crews that would go out and take care of our scenic views and vistas, all to enhance our tourism experience, but also for the benefit of the residents as well. You know, all of us used to, I don't know, I remember when we used to be able to drive down from Jonia down to Epan, and you would have that spectacular view all the way down, but now we don't. Under this administration, we would have put road crews, trustees, if you will, or well-behaved, or prisoners from DOC who want to rehabilitate themselves and want to earn money, and we'll get more into that in a second. But this was a program that we would have put in to beautify our island for tourists and residents alike. You see, the creation of these road gang work crews, if you will, first of all, they have to work and prove themselves ready to get into them. And we have all kinds of security protocols to make sure that they're not bringing contraband in when they come back in. And they get paid for it, another incentive. When they get paid, 35% of their income goes to the Victims Fund. 15% will be used for to offset their incarceration expenses. 15% will go into a personal spending account that they can use to buy authorized products for their own private use. And 35% will go into a prisoner savings account so that when they are finally released from prison, they are going out with money to support themselves. Only prisoners with clean records will be able to apply, and there will be a no-strike policy on this program. You don't get second and third chances. You flub up once, you're out of the program for a year. Give you time to think about it. But there are a lot of little details that we would have put out in a press conference had we been elected. But since we're not, we're just talking in general terms. You know, these people who are in prison eventually are going to be released. We can use the time that they're in prison constructively and create better citizens, or we can turn it into a criminal PhD program that it is right now. Everyone going into the prison system right now comes out more efficient, more effective, and smarter about being a criminal. And that's not something that we as a society can afford. Let's go to full screen. We've got additional challenges ahead of us. This is the drought outlook for 2022 in the major crop areas of the United States. Whether we like it or not, the climate changes are affecting us here on Guam, but not directly. We are not suffering a drought like California, but all the food, all the food let me rephrase that. About 97% of the food we consume on this island comes from farms in the United States. And right now, farms in the United States are caught between a rock and a hard place, starting with drought conditions that have persisted for a number of years that has caused a drawdown in grain reserve. And then on top of that, we have the pandemic penalty, where the farm industry has been hammered by declining demand, shut down factories that have caused farmers to kill off their livestock, and there's in the process of rebuilding the herds now. So what we propose to do here, thank you, Isaac. We're expanding support for local farmers because food insecurity on this island is a real problem already. It was just starting before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we saw it hit its stride, and now with inflation, war, and the climate change issues coming to a head, we're going to see food insecurity get worse on this island before it gets better. So towards that end, we are supporting local farmers by eliminating business privilege tax, although most of them don't pay business privilege tax now, but we want to give them support. We're also going to make prime vendors out of farmers for the Department of Corrections, Guam Memorial Hospital, and the Department of Education. We're also going to work hard to get water and access to CLTC ag lot property, because we have a lot of CLTC lots that were leased for ag purposes that are still not in production yet because they don't have water and they don't have infrastructure. So we are going to use some of the funds that we receive from the sale of GPA to put water lines above ground onto CLTC properties and put roads in. They won't be pretty. They probably won't be. They'll just probably be coral roads to begin with until we can get the money to pave them. But access is access, water is water, and it is our hope that by providing access and water, we could see more farmers coming online, bringing fresh crops to our supermarkets, our schools, and our restaurants. Also, as part of this public service focused administration, we added a small fee to the property tax. But the small fee added to the property tax was more than enough to offset the cost of operations for the Guam Solid Waste Authority. With all businesses covered, and we're subcontracting a lot of the operations out to local businesses, because remember, Solid Waste Authority doesn't pay taxes, but the small businesses and the trash service do. We get a little bit of that money back, but in the meantime, we get a more efficient, more effective solid waste management system, and one that will help dramatically reduce the amount of waste that is being thrown into our jungles on a daily basis. So the way we also streamlined our solid waste stream is we increased our recycling efforts at the user level, starting with a personal private partnership to recycle paper and green waste, a personal private partnership, let's go to full screen, to recycle paper and cardboard by turning it into a mulching compound that we can use to mulch and compost, because the dirt here on Guam needs a lot of help. And by using our paper, cardboard, and green waste and do composting on a large scale, we can provide compost and high quality dirt for our farmers. Along those lines, we're also going to go into glass recycling, because glass can be recycled and used in many, many ways in construction, in golf courses. But by putting in the bottle bill and the can bill, we are collecting money. We have people out there collecting money on recycling cans and bottles, and we're using the bottles to create sand. So we take the paper, cardboard, green waste out of our waste stream, cans and bottles out of our waste stream, and then we will also take plastic out of our waste stream. Lately, a company called Bifusion has been in the news about taking plastics and turning it into usable products like construction materials, park benches, picnic tables, and things like that. We are accumulating way too much plastic on this island, and it's finding its way into our ocean or into the jungles. So the way we do that is we turn it into usable products. So with a public-private partnership on plastic, we will help this developer take the plastic and turn it into something that will benefit all the people of Guam, and at the same time reduce our waste stream. And we will do the same thing with tires. We already have companies on this island that know how to handle tire waste. We've probably got something like about 8 million tire casings on this island as of, I think it was 2002 or 2003. I read a EPA report, and we had at that time, I think it was about 200,000 tire casings a year on this island. Well, we will enter into a public-private partnership to use tire casings in repaving our roads. And in the end result, based on research that has been done by California, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, and Texas, Using rubber is more cost effective. The rubberized asphalt lasts 3 times longer than conventional asphalt, and it's more environmentally responsible. And it also reduces accidents. So you have a product that wears better, and God knows we need that here on Guam. And it provides safer roadways, and it cleans up our environment, makes it safer. As part of our campaign, we focus very heavy on public safety. As you know, there are 3 main missions of our government: public safety, public health, public education. Those all come right after good governance. So in the first year of this administration, we added 100 fully trained police officers to match our population needs, and we combined all the different police commands under one headquarters. No longer do we have a harbor police, an airport police, and a Guam police. We have one police department, and we're using the scale of economies because it used to be that way. I don't understand why we separated, if not for political reasons, to create 3 police chiefs, 3 deputy police chiefs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Combining down allowed us to use the money allocated to salaries at public safety better. We transferred all non-operational vehicles within government of Guam to Guam Police Department. Now I'm talking about directors' cars, deputy directors' cars, things like that, because if all the employees who work in an agency need to drive to work, I see no reason why we need to provide a director or a deputy director with a government vehicle and a government gas card to go to work when we don't provide the same benefits to the people who actually do the work in the agencies. And also we created a parking control division. And we're going to get into that because with these new buildings that we're creating, we're putting in metered systems in Agana and Tamuning and Tumon. The funds from these metered systems will help offset the cost of running a mass transit system, and it will also free up parking congestion. Just imagine the hotels will be able to use more of their parking space for guests when they don't have to provide parking for employees any longer. Frees up congestion around government buildings because the employees will be able to use the mass transit system, and if they choose to drive their car and park, they will have to pay for the privilege, just like someone who's coming to do business with that department or agency. Also, as part of our public safety program, we created and put a separate funding in place for a public prosecutor, because we've learned over the years that an elected attorney general has not served the people of Guam well, because the attorney general of Guam represents the government, not the people. By electing a public prosecutor, that prosecutor knows who he represents, the people of Guam, and has no conflict of interest taking on the government, agencies, or any of its directors or deputy directors for violations of law. We're also, as part of that public safety, we eliminated pretrial release for violent offenders. It doesn't work telling someone who's been arrested for criminal sexual misconduct to not go to his neighbor's house next door. We know that. We've seen it happen time and time again. It doesn't do any good to arrest somebody for beating up someone in a bar or something and letting him go back out into an environment where he's exposed to alcohol and also has the ability to get in fights. We saw a recent report where 70 or 80% of the people being arrested were already out on pretrial release. Under this administration, as a public service and focused on public safety, that program is over. Now, most of the time, these people are released because there are space considerations. We'll get into that when we talk about the prison coming up. We also expanded probation office because the caseloads were getting ridiculous, because our goal with prisoners is to eventually return them into the society as good citizens. But in order to do that, the probation department needs to be beefed up and be able to use technology. And we also need to be able to use a home arrest program with tracking for nonviolent offenders. And in order to do that, it helps reduce the strain on our prison and jail system. And also, as public safety, we have put a security officer assigned to each village, working as a partner with the mayor. Now, this is not a police officer. This is more like a security guard. But this security guard has the ability to write citations and handle reports and serve as a contact between the police department, the mayor's office, and the residents of the village. And one of the most important part of our program on crime was we brought in 50 new drug detection dog teams and put them into play. And since so much of the drug trafficking has been happening through government offices, we have put a policy in place where the drug dogs will randomly go through all government of Guam offices and facilities. We will also screen all cargo containers coming into the port, coming into the airport before those containers are released to their receivers. And we will also have the drug dogs scan all mail coming in and also make random patrols around the mailboxes at the village level. It's the only way we're going to be able to slow down the rapid growth of meth on this island, and why politicians have been avoiding doing this, even though I've been talking about it for 10 years, is beyond me. But you can't dramatically ramp up detection efforts without ramping up rehabilitation efforts. So we're going, in this administration, we created a volunteer-free residential rehab program, because this is a serious problem and it needs a serious effort. And for a lot of people, it's not something they can do part-time. They need to do this full-time. So we're going to make a rehabilitation facility available for those residents who seriously are trying to wean themselves or kick the habit of drugs. As part of our public safety process, we installed some new prison processes. The first thing we did is we put a tent city inside a wired enclosure, inside the wired enclosure at the old DOC, to hold the overflow. It worked in Arizona, it can work here. We put in a new, very strong drug detection process, because as we have seen over the past 15 years I've been back on island, there are a lot of drugs flowing in and out and through in the prison. That ended in this administration. We also put in a healthy lifestyle changes to improve the health of the prisoners, reduce the medical expenses of the prisoners as well. And smoking is not a constitutional right. Therefore, there is no smoking in the prison, and there is no drinking in the prison. And with these new detection programs, there are no drugs in the prison. So as our prisoners get healthier, hopefully they will apply themselves more to learning the skills and make the changes necessary to become good contributing citizens to our society when they come out. We partnered with the Guam Construction and Trade Academy to create training programs in the prison, and we also put a motor pool in the prison in partnership with Department of Public Works, so that we can train these people how to do jobs that are badly needed in our society, so that when they're released, their chances of going back in are dramatically reduced. And at the same time, they can help maintain the equipment owned by Government of Guam and the buses owned by Government of Guam, both our school buses and our mass transit buses, and any other vehicle owned by Government of Guam, and in the process earn money for their victim restitution fund and for their prisoner release fund. And by the time they are released from prison, they should be contributing members of our community. So During this first year, during 2019, we sorted out our prisoners into three groups. They are either in class, getting an education, they're on work release or working in the prison, or they're in lockdown if they refuse to participate. We created the work release programs as a way of allowing them to contribute and work their way back into society, but also to reduce the cost of government operation. And we began a construction on a new prison. Let's go to the slide. This is the old prison as it is right now, and we have started a new prison, and this is where the new prison building will be built, so there's minimal impact on the existing prison grounds. It's a 6-story, high-density security building with state-of-the-art technology. There will be 300 cells in this building, giving it a max capacity of 900 prisoners. Each cell will have 3 bunks, and there will be video cameras in each cell. And then there will be a dining facility and a screened rooftop exercise yard on the roof of this 6-story building. The screening will prevent items being dropped by drone, as we've seen becoming the latest thing here at the prison. C2 is the second phase, and that will be the contractor-operated motor pool for bus, heavy equipment, and government vehicles. So we will have DPW or a vendor who has the contract to run that, training prisoners on how to work on this type of equipment. The ground floor will have the repair shed and the classrooms. The second floor will be the prison offices, a no-contact visitor center, a Zoom call center, and a contact visitor center on the second floor. Third building will be a indoor hydroponics garden growing high-value vegetables and fruit for consumption by the residents of the prison, the residents of Guam Memorial Hospital, our school system, and for sale to the general public. B4 would be a second tower, the location of the second tower, if we were going to need to have a second tower. But we're setting aside the space now, shoulder, so that at some point in time, when we need it, it's there, and we already have the plans and the infrastructure in place. It's called the Department of Corrections. It's not the Guam prison. So if we're going to rehabilitate these people, we have to take we have to do it methodically. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. And when we consider that our prison population has grown over the years, and with the out-of-control meth epidemic and unemployment, we're seeing a dramatic rise in crime on this island. I only see it getting bigger before it starts getting smaller, but we need to put the tools in place if we're going to salvage the lives of these people and return them back into our community, because at some point in time, they will be coming back into our community. But the question is, do they come back as advanced PhD criminals, or do they come back as skilled, badly needed members who have been reformed and now have proven that they are willing to be contributing members to our society? Well, if we don't give them the chance, we'll never know. Next. Yeah, you got me. Good. Okay, the second critical mission of our government is public health care. I know that this is running a little longer than usual, but these are important topics, and we have an election coming up, and we can't leave these issues undiscussed as much as politicians would like. And the more we know about these issues, the better job we can do determining who to cast our very precious votes for in 2022. Because remember, with our votes, we are putting people in position of power and authority to create laws, act, and spend money in our name. Let's get it right for a change. And in public health, we've had a lot of problems there that hopefully we can get right if we do a better job at selecting our representatives. So, in 2019, our public service-minded leader dissolved the board of directors of Guam Memorial Hospital and took administration directly under his office, much like former Governor Carl Gutierrez did. And we hired an administrator with solid and verifiable credentials of success running a hospital facility. And during that first year, during the first 90 days, we put in motion to renovate the labor and delivery room because 2,000 to 3,000 children a year are born on this island in that facility. And unfortunately, politicians have dithered. I mean, the first time I testified, I think, was 2012 on labor and delivery issues. So here we are 10 years later, nothing's been done. Under this public service-minded administration, that was one of the first things that was done. We also reviewed all the contracts of all the administrators and the doctors, and we eliminated duplication of effort and the contracts that I believe had ethical challenges. And it probably, in the long run, saved the Guam Memorial Hospital $2 to $3 million in operations. And I say that as someone who ran through the checkbook at Guam Memorial Hospital for the first 18 months of the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration, and I was appalled at the wasteful spending I saw there. And also, to make the hospital a more patient focused place, we moved the employee parking over to the old hospital site on Oka Point. We ran a shuttle every 30 minutes. So employees could park over at the old site and ride the shuttle every 30 minutes, or they could walk the 10 minutes it takes to walk from the site of the old hospital to the current GM8. That freed up all the parking in front of Guam Memorial Hospital and next to the Behavioral Wellness Center for patients and their families to use. No longer are people driving around sometimes I've driven around in Guam Memorial Hospital parking lot for up to 40 minutes waiting for a spot. No more. We also recognize that our private medical community is a substantial part of the public health care system on this island. So we created a board of advisors to work with public health and the governor's office and our private medical care providers to coordinate investments on the government side and on the private sector side in technology, equipment, new facilities, and infrastructure upgrades. Because as much as possible, we wanted to minimize the duplication of effort. A little duplication, a little redundancy is a good thing, but we wanted to maximize the money being invested in the healthcare system on Guam because we have a small population. We're barely a little over 150,000. 75% of those people do not have adequate health care coverage, and 75 to 80% of those people, all sources income combined, are making less than $50,000 a year. So if we're going to have an effective medical healthcare system, we have to work in close partnership with our medical private clinics and offices to make sure that we are not duplicating effort. So when we eventually rebuild Guam Memorial Hospital, it'll be a different facility than the one we have now, because right now the current facility duplicates services and technologies that are offered by our medical care partners. We want to focus on the areas that is more cost effective for the government to develop, build, and manage, and the ones that are more cost effective for our private care providers to build, develop, and manage, we'll let them do it. And the reason why this will work is because we're going to go to a universal health care program. Hawaii went into one in the 70s, and Hawaii has one of the highest rates of medical care coverage for their residents, in the 95+%. Here on Guam, we learned during the Calvo administration that about 75% of the people of Guam do not have adequate health care coverage. That's why the number one general practitioner is the emergency room at Guam Memorial Hospital. in order to get away from that, we need to make medical coverage affordable to all people on the island. By bundling all of our employees in one group, we bring mass buying power to the market, and we will get better coverage for everyone, more affordable coverage for everyone. Because in states where they don't have universal health care coverage over the past decade, we've seen premiums go up double digits every year. In Hawaii, it goes up single digits. So that's a good example that we can follow from our neighbors in Hawaii. Also, in this administration, we selected a site for a new hospital. If you can go to the screen. And as you can see, it is not Eagles Field, because Eagles Field did not make any sense whatsoever. It's the area by the Guam Power Base Yard there in Tamuning by the ITC building. Now, this location makes a hell of a lot more sense than Eagles Field because it's already close to the existing Guam Memorial Hospital, which will make transfer easy. It's also located in the medical system corridor, because when you look at all the doctors' offices and medical clinics in the area, the majority of them are located in the Tamuning area. So moving the hospital from where it is now over to that makes sense because we have easy road access. We don't have easy road access out on Eagles Field. So when we look at this building, the red zone right there will be the main hospital building. The yellow zone right there will be a acute care and emergency care facility as well. So the emergency rooms right there will be in the yellow building, with the operating rooms and the labor and delivery rooms on the floors above the emergency room. And the main hospital building will be the area in red, and the ground floor will be metered parking. Now, the way we afford this building is we take the lots here. The one on the left is the current Government of Guam Medical Complex, the hospital and behavioral wellness clinic. And we take that lot and we take the property where the old hospital used to be, and we offer them to a developer to develop in exchange for building the building of our hospital here. So that's one way that we can dramatically reduce the cost of a new facility by exchanging very valuable property that has high commercial value, has high development opportunity, and return them back to the people of Guam through services, building our new hospital right here. So by moving the hospital from where it is now up in the middle of a residential section to moving it down into the middle of an industrial commercial corridor with easy access to the main road, a helicopter pad on the roof, and move the behavioral wellness clinic into this facility as well, we bring all of Guam's public healthcare frontline assets into one location where they can be easily supported by the private medical community. Off screen. Which brings us to also developing a strong partnership with the U.S. Department of Health and the DoD, Department of Defense, because their hospital is small. So they obviously would like to see us build a state-of-the-art facility. We're going to get their help for it. Now, as a result of the pandemic, we have to recognize that that would have happened during this public service administration. So how would we have handled things differently in a public service focused administration as opposed to a personal privilege administration? Well, the first thing we would have done is we would have accepted the mobile hospital from Joint Region, and we would have had them set that mobile hospital up right there at JFK. parking lot. Because during the emergency, when the schools were closed, setting up the mobile hospital right there in the parking lot would have provided easy access to the main roads and would have been able to support both the Guam Memorial Hospital and the Guam Regional Medical Center. We would have requested from Joint Region a new air ambulance to be assigned to the Guam National Guard and have people trained to run that. I believe we already have it as well. But we would have used some of the American Rescue Plan funds to build a helicopter pad at Inarajan, one in Dedido, one in Manila, using ARP funds. So that what we do is we strengthen our healthcare system by providing rapid transit between areas where traffic is congested and difficult, so that during that first golden hour, we can rapidly move people where minutes matter. And we would also build an ambulance bay at all of the mayor's offices that do not have a fire station in their village. And we would have volunteer EMTs go through training and certification to become a volunteer EMT serving their village until such time as we have vacancies opening up in Guam Fire for EMT positions. But this gives us an ongoing training program to get a strong core of EMT peoples down to the village level to make our peoples safer. And we would have used American Rescue Plan funds to expand the services offered at our public health care centers at Inarajan and Dedido. And we would have used the money to renovate, rehabilitate public health care center in Manila and the skilled nursing unit as well. And by moving public health back into their headquarters in Manila, that's another $300,000 a year that's removed from the expense line of Government of Guam operations and goes back into the quality of life line that we can use for other things as well. And we would also, as we have learned through this pandemic, that non-communicable diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiac disease, kidney disease were major factors in the death toll we found going through this COVID situation. We have worked with our NGO partners here, non-governmental organizations. We have a lot of people on Guam who are public service minded, and people who work through these organizations are trying to make Guam a better place. And one of the ways they're going to be able to help do that, we're going to fund their efforts to reach out and help educate people on lifestyle change. Because lifestyle changes are more effective at preventing the types of illnesses and injuries we see ravaging our people right now. Everybody out there knows some family who's dealing with diabetes, cancer, high blood pressure, heart disease, and I'm no different. Full screen. This is me a year and a half ago. This is me now. These were lifestyle changes. These lifestyle changes are easy to replicate and can make a difference in whether or not you have a high quality of life, a healthy quality of life, or a low quality of life. Okay, go back, or not. And we're going to be working with our NGO partners to make this level of education that I went through available to everybody in all the villages. And in the long run, we should see that in future pandemics, that we hopefully won't have the same kind of ravages to our community that we saw with this one. Now, everybody running for office, and you're going to hear it this coming season, they're all going to tell you that children are the most important export of Guam, and that's true. We owe it to our children to do a better job sending them out there to compete on the world, because our local economy does not create enough middle-class jobs to keep them here. So our children are competing on the world stage, and the question that I always ask politicians, what do we do to make sure that they are well equipped for that level of competition? Well, we need to start backing that up. In the first days of this public service administration, the lieutenant governor and I and our designated cabinet members went around to all the schools, the high schools and the junior high schools, and sat down with the students and talked with them about the importance of their education. And we created new programs to give them incentives to want to do better. We have to lead our children by example. And that's one way that this administration has chosen to do that. So what we need to do is work very closely with the Board of Education to strengthen our education processes. I believe, and I'm working with the board right now, to find ways to implement a 4-quarter system, because it's been proven that the longer children are in school, the better they learn, and that's very important. And we also have to reevaluate our teacher compensation, because we are losing teachers to other locations that pay more. We need to remember that our teachers are creating the future of our island, starting from kindergarten up, and we need to keep our teachers here. We don't want to be one of those locales that is trying to import teachers from someplace else. We need to embrace technology in our classrooms, and we need to work with our Board of Education to find ways to take our learning system to the 21st century. We need to teach our children the way they will work in their careers, and that's going to take a lot of work on all of our parts, but it's for the benefit of our children. We need to re-engineer school funding, because right now, with education, nearly 50% of the budget is not going to work for too much longer, because over the past few years, our economy has been devastated. Our revenues are going to drop dramatically because we've lost our tourism industry, and experts are saying it will be 2 to 3 or 4 years before it gets back, if it ever gets back to where it was. We don't know. But in the meantime, we've lost a lot of businesses that have shut their doors forever, and we have a lot of people still unemployed, and those who are employed are on reduced hours. Many are on reduced hours. And we can't count on the federal government to keep bailing Guam out. So we need to work with our Board of Education to use our education dollars better. And the proposal we have before them right now is to consolidate our operations down to fewer buildings, newer buildings, and high-tech buildings, and to upgrade our transit systems to enable the students to transport themselves from middle school up to and from school using mass transit like it happens in Hawaii. With fewer campuses, we can concentrate and use our education dollars better. And that's something that's going to take all of us to work on. As I said at the beginning of this address, these ideas have been floating around for years. These are not all my ideas. These are ideas that I got from other people as I spent the past 15 years as a community advocate talking with people and learning from our people. We've got a lot of smart people here. So all these ideas that I've talked about have been floating around for a long time. It's just that our politicians have lacked the political will to put them into play. Our politicians seem to be more concerned about getting reelected than they are about keeping the campaign promises they make. And so it's up to us as voters to hold all the politicians running for reelection or running for election accountable for the promises they make. Because as we have seen with this administration and this legislature, things could have been better. And granted, they could have been worse. And I don't overlook that. But the point is, our votes set the future of Guam. So we need to do a better job picking the people we vote for. I'm Ken Leon-Guerrero. This is my point of view. Let me see if we got any questions in. If not, let's see. I've got a couple of comments, but no questions. And let's see if there's been any on the radio or on the Facebook. Well, couple of comments. Well, on that happy note, I'm Ken Leon-Guerrero. If you would like to leave me a message on my phone, my cell phone, that's 671-727-4321, or you can send me an email at kenleonguerrero@yahoo.com. And I'll be back again next week, sharing with you another point of view. Thank you.